When I was in middle age, my hormones controlled about 90% of my brain. What made up the other 10%? Cars and motorcycles, of course. I spent my 20s lusting after every woman living on the planet. I tried college, but the money ran out after 1 year. I met the love of my life, Anne, served 2 years in the Marines, and then married her as soon as I got out. After 2 years of marriage, we went into debt up to our eyeballs, buying a small two-bedroom house. To my horror, Anne got pregnant and 9 months later gave birth to our first son. Someone closed, let me rephrase that. Someone slammed the damn door on my carefree life, and I wasn't happy about it. In those days, if you found out you had a bun in the oven, you didn't care about it. You just accepted it and moved on with your life. Our cute two-seater was replaced by a family car, and we no longer went somewhere just on a whim. We now had to plan and take the house with us. Lovemaking was down from 9 times a week to 2 or 3. Oh well, things will get better when he gets a little older, I thought. But it never did. Such is life. We spent our 30s trying to make ends meet. Now we had another son and a new, bigger house, because 2 bedrooms were no longer enough. Along with the bigger house came a bigger mortgage, which meant longer working hours. Overtime was no longer a luxury, but became a necessity. Now we couldn't buy everything we wanted. A new word was added to our vocabulary: needs. Needs, not wants, now ruled our lives. We planned and set aside money for each purchase. We saved the money left over at the end of the month for emergencies or to pay off one of the credit cards that suddenly came out of nowhere. We were a happy family, but my stress level was at an all-time high. Lovemaking now had to be fit into our busy schedules. Twice a year we had date weekends when one of the parents looked after the boys, and we were now getting to know each other anew. "I'm not as young as I used to be," she complained. "I can't do it all night like I used to." Our 40s were spent trying to get the kids out of the house. With the pay raises of the last 10 years, we have a little more disposable income, even with 2 boys in college. Thank goodness for student loans. Thankfully, they both went to community college so we didn't have to pay for room and board, but the rest of our expenses skyrocketed. It was all worth it when they both graduated college and moved away from home. Yes, we finally became empty nesters. However, Anne replaced the kids with other activities, from going to the gym to dance classes to immersing herself in politics. From our 30s to our 40s, our lovemaking not only didn't increase, it didn't decrease. My time has come again, I kept telling myself. The 50s were to be our time. The kids were free from work, and for the first time in years, we could do whatever we wanted. We took out a couple loans, and I thought we were in for the best time of our lives. And then something happened that I never expected in any way: menopause. It wasn't fair. It just wasn't fair, I kept telling myself over and over again. My wife was going through her changes, and I was going through mine. Her hormones were going crazy, and her mood swings were off the charts. For a while, she tried to control everything with food and herbs, but it didn't work. Eventually, she went to the doctor and got medication to control her body chemistry. She still had temperature swings. She didn't cry on demand, but still had occasional mood swings and night sweats. It was all bad, but the final nail in the coffin lid was driven when Anne lost her attraction. Not completely, of course, but enough that once every 3 weeks was more than enough for her. I'd gone through my 30s and 40s knowing I had something to look forward to and felt cheated. I had done my work for the last 20 years and now I could do it in my sleep. I had progressed so much that my salary was now more than double what it was when I first started, and all the stress from years ago was now gone. I was like a reborn teenager. My wife couldn't get pregnant no matter what I did. "For heaven's sake, Steve, can't you pull yourself together? I'm trying to make dinner and I can't do it and also fight you off," she yelled at me. "Then let's skip dinner and have a little fun." "Remember when we used to make love?" I said, trying to get a kiss. "Back off, boy, or you'll never get any," she replied, trying to finish our dinner. Was I upset? Yes. But what the hell was I going to do? Interrupt her? I said to myself. So after a while, I just let the situation go. I made no advances and waited for her to get aggressive on her own to see how long it would take, or how long she could hold out. After about a month, Anne told me she appreciated me not lunging at her and grabbing her every time she walked by. I can't believe it, I said to myself. She's thanking me for not doing this to her. I needed a plan, I told myself. Anne and I went spinning on Thursdays and Fridays, and on Mondays and Tuesdays we went to the gym. I was pretty friendly with the two women at spinning and the one at the gym, so I decided to see if they could help me get my life back on track. What do you want me to do? Asked Beth, looking at Cindy. I need you to flirt with me, I told them. Not right in front of her, but when she's around, if that makes any sense, I told them. You want us to make Anne jealous? And you think that's going to do you any good? Asked Cindy. I just want her to think that other women find me attractive and desirable, so maybe she'll appreciate me a little more, I told the two of them. So this is all about sex? Asked Beth. I told you he misses Cindy, Beth laughed loudly. Look, Steve, Anne and I are friends, and I don't want her to be mad at me. We'll play your little game, but just not for long. And if it gets out of hand, we'll call it a day. Okay? Thanks, guys. This won't take long. I'm just trying to get our lives up and running, that's all, I told them. And it wasn't a lie. Tammy from the gym agreed too and thought it might be fun. She, like me, was a runner, and we had run and talked on the treadmills more than once. I didn't know exactly how old she was, but she was younger than me. She had a typical runner's build. She looked good, was in great shape, and was sure to catch Anne's attention. We decided it would be best if we met at the gym and went for a run together. That way, we could both work out and be together without attracting Anne's attention at the gym. My plan was working. Cindy and Beth made sure to talk to me before and after class. I helped Cindy set up her bike, and Beth asked if she could share my water bottles because she forgot hers. It took about 2 weeks before Anne started to really notice it, and finally said one evening after class when I was talking to the two of them. Come on, Steve, I'm hungry and I want to go home, she called out to me. Just a second, honey, I said as I went back to talking to Beth and Cindy for another 10 or 15 seconds. See you guys tomorrow, I told them, turned and walked to our car where Anne was waiting. What took you guys so long? She asked. We were just talking about classes and comparing Chris and Jamie's classes, that's all. Well, I'm hungry, so let's get moving, she said, looking at me. When Tammy asked me to go out for another run in front of Anne, I thought she was going to have a cow. Because of your knees, you can't run anymore, and it would be great if you had someone to run with for a change. I'll just meet you at home when we're done, I said to an excited Anne. On Thursday, Cindy touched my arm, laughing at an implied joke, and Beth hugged me for helping her adjust her footrests at Friday's class. Anne just stood there watching us, and when I walked back to the car, I realized she was ready to explode. They're getting too friendly, she said, stepping toward me. What are you talking about? Anne, this is Beth and Cindy. They're just being friendly for God's sake. I'm not sleeping with them, am I? I just don't like them touching you. None of them are married, and I don't want them to get any ideas, she told me as we pulled up to our house. Anne, listen to yourself. Do you feel threatened by Cindy and Beth? You're probably right, she said, still looking at me. When I got home 25 minutes late from the gym after my run with Tammy, I was bombarded with questions. Why was I late? Where had we been running? And why hadn't I called if I knew I was going to be late? Anne, I don't carry my cell phone with me when I run, and it was such a nice evening that we decided to go the extra mile, I told her. We stopped by the hospital and then ran past her apartment and stopped for a glass of water before heading home, I told her. You stopped by her apartment? She asked. Yeah, just for a second to get a drink of water, I told her in my most sincere voice. She has a really nice apartment, and although it's a little small, she has a huge bedroom. The seed had been planted. What the hell were you doing in her bedroom? Shouted Anne back at me. She just gave me a tour while I finished my bottle of water. What are we having for dinner? Said I, deliberately changing the subject. Today, I don't want you in some damn girl's bedroom, you hear me? She shouted. Okay, No more bedrooms. Happy now? I asked. So, what are we having for dinner? We hadn't had anything in a while, and when Anne asked if I wanted to do something this evening, I waved it off for the first time in our marriage. You don't want to have fun with me tonight? An astonished Anne asked. My leg cramped up during my run today and it's starting to tighten up again, I told her. Why don't we wait a day or two until I recover? I asked. For the first time in my life. How does it feel, Anne? I thought to myself. It's great. Just fine, Anne told me. Just let me know when you're ready, she said in an annoyed voice. It was another 4 days before she brought it up again. Why aren't we doing this anymore? Asked Anne on Thursday night after dinner. What are you talking about? We do it all the time, I replied. It's been 26 days since we last did it. I'm keeping an eye on it. God, it doesn't seem like it's been that long. Are you sure? She tossed me a calendar. See for yourself. April 16th is the last time. I looked at it, and April 16th was circled in red. I'm not saying you're lying. It just doesn't seem like that long ago, I told her. You don't kiss me anymore. You don't hug me anymore, she said in an accusing tone. Wait a minute. Aren't you the one who was always complaining about how I'm all over you? That I'm acting like a love-starved teenager and you don't want anything? Or maybe it was someone else who was thanking me for leaving her alone? I said sarcastically. Make up your damn mind, Anne. Either you want it or you don't. Which is it? Not wanting to fall behind, Anne went on the offensive. Well, if you're not getting it from me, Steve, then who are you having fun with? Probably with that tramp Beth, or maybe you're taking another tour of Tammy's bedroom, she said, getting even more angry. Anne, I don't get anything from anyone but you, and even then it doesn't seem to be very often, I said with a smile, hoping to lighten the mood. It didn't work. If I even think you're cheating on me, I'll chop that son of a bitch off, she yelled back at me. It was a joke, honey. It was just my own sick way of making a joke, I tried to tell her before she stormed out of the room. I tried to start something that night, but all I got was her rebuff. Maybe you should call Beth or Tammy. Maybe they have some damn time, was all she said. Anne was furious all weekend. I tried to apologize a couple of times, but got nowhere. Damn it, my plan was worse than a failure. At least I used to get something before, but now it was less than nothing. On Tuesday, I went for a run with Tammy. At least I had a friendly face to look at every night we ran together. Tonight, I need you to push me hard. I have a 10K run on Sunday morning, and I want to test how fast I can run it, Tammy explained. We've been running at her pace for the last month, and today she wanted to run at my pace. I ran a little slow for the first half mile, and then picked up the pace for the next mile and a half. Are you tired of me already, Steve? Or is this the best you can do? She teased me. Okay, girl, hang on to your thong and see if you can keep up with me, I replied. We covered the next 3 miles at almost sprinting speed. A quarter mile before the finish line, I started yelling at her to pick up the pace. Come on, girl, get moving. You don't have to swing away from me, I yelled to her. When I saw her apartment building, I started sprinting. Come on, Tammy, push it. Don't leave anything in the tank, I shouted as we both panted our asses out. I thought she was going to throw up as we pulled into her parking lot. Good job, I told her as we both walked around trying to regain our breath. If you run like that on Sunday, no one will touch you, I said, and high-fived her, after which she gave me a sweaty hug. Thanks, I needed that. Surely I can't talk you into running with me on Sunday. I told Anne I'd invite her to brunch at Tony's to make it up to her. She's been on edge for the last 2 weeks, and I'm trying to win her favor. And maybe in bed, I said with a smile. Well, come on up. I'll get you a Gatorade and send you home, she said as we walked hand in hand to her building. After having 2 small drinks, I went for a 2-mile jog to my house. I didn't see Anne when I walked in the door, so I headed to the shower for a well-deserved shower. I showered, shaved, and brushed my teeth. I was just getting out of the shower when I saw Anne in the doorway. Washing off the evidence? She asked, putting her hands on her hips. What? Said I, not believing what I thought I had just heard Anne say. You heard me, she said, turning around and walking down the hall. And what the hell did I do? I said, finishing wiping myself off. I found Anne pacing back and forth in our bedroom. I can't believe you slept with her. You're almost old enough to be her father. Anne, what the hell are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I'm not that stupid, she snapped back. I followed the two of you today. After your run, I saw the two of you heading toward her apartment, holding hands. I waited for you to come out and left 10 minutes later. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what you two were doing there. Anne, are you out of your mind? Just listen to yourself. I went in for a couple glasses of Gatorade, that's all. There was no hugging, no kissing, nothing. If you want, let's go to bed right now. You'll never touch me again, she hissed back. I guess I should have thought before I answered. What else is new? I said, which only made her even angrier. Our emotions took over, and we traded insults like a pair of small children trying to hurt each other as much as possible. How would a dried-up shell of a woman like you know? Bad move, Steve, was all my brain said. For the next 20 minutes after the bedroom door was slammed in my face, I tried to retreat. I sat in the hallway with my back against the door and listened to Anne cry nonstop for the next 2 hours. After that, things quieted down. I knocked on the door several times, but got no answer. I went down the stairs to the kitchen, made something to eat, and spent the night on the couch trying to figure out how I was going to get out of this situation. I woke up sometime around 6:30 and went upstairs to an empty bedroom. The bed was made, but she was gone. Sometime during the night, Anne had gotten out of our house and gone somewhere. I showered and got dressed for work. It had been a long day. I wrote a dozen emails to her at work asking for forgiveness before I could fill up the voicemail account on her cell phone, but got no response. After work, I went to look for her, but came home to an empty house. Anne entered the gym and glanced around the workout area before she noticed her. Tammy was just getting off the machine, wiping the sweat off herself in the machine, when she felt a bump that made her fall to her knees. Anne came up behind her and swung with all her might from somewhere on her left side. "Leave my husband alone," she shouted. "Find a man of your own and stop sleeping with mine, slut." Anne had picked the wrong girl, that was for sure. She had already started to turn away when Tammy rose to her feet and pounced on the surprised Anne with a cold look, taking her to the ground. "Bitch, don't you dare raise your hand to me again, or I'll mop the floor with you. I won't sleep with your damn husband, but after this, if he asks me to, I'll gladly give in to him." "It's not my problem that you can't satisfy your man," Tammy said as she walked away. Anne lay like that for about 20 more seconds before one of the trainers helped her to her feet. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No, I don't think I'll ever be okay again," she replied, and walked out looking at the stunned group of people. "I'll never be able to show my face out there again," she said as she got into the car. The knot on her face, just under her left eye, began to throb and swell as she pulled up to her son Kenny's house. His wife Lisa met her at the door and asked what the hell was wrong with her face. "Lisa, questions later. Just get me some ice, please." A frozen bag of peas applied to her face for 20 minutes reduced the swelling, but it was clear to Anne that she was going to have one hell of a bruise. "Anne, who did this to you?" asked Lisa. "I did it to myself," was all she answered. When Kenny got home shortly afterward, he was furious when his mother didn't tell him how she got the black eye. "Daddy didn't do that to you, did he?" "No. Your father never raised a hand to me in all the years I've known him. He was the kindest and most compassionate man I've ever known. I'm just sorry I drove him away. I hope his next wife will be to his liking." Kenny finally reached me on my cell phone. "Dad, you need to get over here right now. There's something wrong with Mom and she's not right in the head. I don't know what's wrong, but I think you need to get her to the hospital right away," my son told me. I never would have thought that Anne would end up at Kenny's because Anne didn't really care for Lisa. She thought Lisa was pushing Kenny too hard so they could have the best things in life. Who would have thought it? "Anne, what happened to your face?" I asked, walking into the living room. "Steve, let's just go home." Anne stood up and took my hand. The ride was quiet until Anne spoke. Tammy and I got into a fight at the gym. I told her to stay away from you after I hit her. She hit me back and told me she wouldn't sleep with you. As you can see, I got the worst of it, Anne said as we pulled into the garage. When we got into the house, I should have grabbed her, told her how much I loved her and that she was all I cared about. Instead, I did something really stupid. I told her the truth, that I was just trying to make her jealous. When I tried to explain what I did and why, she just looked at me without saying anything. But that didn't last long. Mount St. Anne was about to erupt. Let me get this straight. You set this whole thing up with Beth, Cindy, and Tammy to make me jealous so I could have more fun with you? Didn't you? You let me make a complete ass out of myself in front of 30 people at the gym because you wanted to get in my pants again? Was it all just your sick game? Is that all you think of me? Just a toy? What happened to me being your loving wife, your partner, the mother of your damn children? Spoke Anne, asking me question after question. You miserable piece of shit! Get out of my sight! Anne shouted, stepping forward. Anne, I did it for us, I tried to say as she beat me with her fists, screaming at me to get the hell away from her and out of her house. Anne picked up the canisters off the counter and threw them at me along with everything else she could get her hands on. I had never seen her so furious. She kept screaming and demanding that I leave. I left for no reason, just to defuse the situation and let her cool down. But that didn't happen. When I got home that evening, she was gone. I found out later that she had gone back to my son's house. On Thursday, after I left for work, Lisa came into the house and took some more of her clothes. I spent the rest of that week eating crow and trying to get Anne to talk to me. I found out later that she had talked to both Beth and Cindy and had lashed out at them as well. As I said, my plan failed. All the next week I called, emailed her work, and even traveled to my son's house to talk to her. Nothing helped. Mom doesn't want to see or talk to you, Dad, Kenny told me. Just let me talk to her for a minute, I begged him. I'm sorry, Dad. I think you really screwed up big time this time, he told me. On Friday, I got the surprise of a lifetime. Mr. Stephen Moore? A man asked when I opened the door in my running clothes. Yes, what can I do for you? You've already been served. Have a nice day, he said as he handed me a manila envelope. I didn't even bother to read the papers. 2 minutes later, I was already in my car, heading to my son's house. The son met me on the steps. You son of a bitch! You let me stay in the shadows! I shouted at him. Where the hell is she? She and Lisa took off because they knew you'd be here sooner or later. Well, then I'll just wait the hell out for them, I told my son. I can't let you do that, Dad, Kenny told me. Why the hell not? I asked. Mom asked me not to, was his only answer. Then you better call the police because I'm not leaving. The little asshole did just that. I was escorted off his property and 24 hours later, a restraining order was placed on me. I got mad and changed the locks on the house. 2 can play at this game. My second son, Jimmy, tried to interfere with what was going on, but everyone told him not to get involved. Things got really bad when Anne tried to get her clothes out of the house. Lisa and Kenny came to the door, but I wouldn't let them in. Get off my property or I'll call the police, I yelled to them through the door. Dad, just let us take Mom's clothes, he begged. I can't. Unless you have a court order and receipts, she's not getting anything. I'm already thinking of having a small bonfire in the backyard to get rid of all the junk in the house, I told them, as Kenny got angry and tried to force his way into the house. The police escorted the pissed-off Kenny and Lisa off my property. Payback is a bitch. I threw the divorce papers in the trash and told her I wouldn't sign them. I didn't hire an attorney and avoided her at every turn. I didn't answer phone calls, emails, or open the door unless I knew who was coming. Same at work. If she wanted a divorce, she should have pursued it herself. I thought with time she would soften up a bit. Guess I was wrong. After 6 months of strife, I thought I had gotten a little stronger until Anne started dating and making sure I knew about it. She went here and there and wiped my nose every chance she got. Tom says I'm the best girl he's had in years, read a letter Anne sent to the house. Just thought you might be interested to know that not everyone thinks I'm some dried-up shell of a woman. The photo attached to the letter of her in bed with him was enough to ruin that week and the next 6 months. I had written off Anne, Kenny, Lisa, and for a while my second son, Jimmy. I had done something stupid and lost everything. I fell into a deep depression and ended up taking medication and seeing a psychologist and a woman. Once a week, I'd pour my heart out to her and tell her what a stupid ass I'd been. But after 3 months, she helped me realize that it wasn't entirely my fault. From day one, I kept a journal, writing down my feelings about Anne and everyone else. I lamented the fact that I had let my life go to waste and that Anne and I had stopped communicating. For the first time in 10 years, I started traveling for work. It helped me take my mind off my problems and get back on my feet. Every once in a while, I would run into someone I knew, and they would say how sorry they were to hear that Anne and I had broken up. Then, they'd add that they'd seen her with so-and-so, as if I really wanted to know. I stopped going spinning and gave up my gym membership. There was no point in going out with other acquaintances who seemed to take great pride in telling me how well Anne was doing. The only consistency in my life was that I was still running like a man possessed. One Sunday morning, I was taking a long jog when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "I thought you moved or died," Tammy said, catching up with me. "Just inside," I told her, slowing my step so she could keep up with me. "I feel responsible for what happened," she said, stopping. "It's not your fault. I'm the one who started it, and I guess I'm the one who finished it," I told her. "Well, you look like shit. Why don't you come over sometime and I'll make you a home-cooked meal? You know where I live, don't you?" "Ernest, maybe I'll take you up on your offer when I get back in town. At least I'll give you a call. How about it?" I told her. "Well, I'll stay out of the way this time. Remember, you have to call me when you get back," she said, as she hugged and kissed me tightly. I planned to take 4 days off before going on a 2-week trip to our clients in the Northeast. It was supposed to be a PR trip. It was my boss's idea. "Get out of here for a couple weeks. You're just stale, and you need to get your head and ass back together again. Go through NE territory, and I'll see you back here when you're done." I reminded him that I had a few days vacation. "Okay, so I won't see you for 3 weeks. It's not like the world will stop spinning if you're gone for a while. Just make sure Katie's on top of things and your team leaders know what to do. Have a good trip, get laid, and I'll see you when you get back." Tuesday morning, I woke up in an almost good mood. I put on shorts and sneakers and went for a long run. The weather was beautiful, and I used the time to clear my head and plan where life would take me in the next couple months. I think I'm going to sell the house. It's too big for me, and I can rent an apartment until I decide where I'm going to live next. I took a few bucks out of the bank and bought a small one-bedroom condo in Sarasota, Florida. Now I was planning to retire there in the next 3 or 4 years. Anne and I had talked about it years ago, and it looked like I was going to do it alone. As I passed the large Catholic church, I waited impatiently for the stop signal across the street from the school. I almost crossed the road against the light because I saw only one car coming, but for some unknown reason, I decided to wait. The light turned green, and I started to cross, as did a group of school children with a teacher on the other side. What made me look, I have no idea. Only that I looked to my right and noticed that a car was not slowing down. I yelled at the kids to get back to the curb, but they just stopped and stared at the crazy man who was yelling at them. I ran 15 yards in record time, even with my arms fully extended. I pushed all 10 kids away, including the teacher, and knocked most of them to the ground. That's all I remember. I tried to open my eyes, but only one gave in. I had a hard time focusing and getting my brain to work. I saw two faces looking down at me as I tried to say something. "Can you tell me your name?" "Who is Anne?" they asked. I lifted my head slightly, and then everything went back to black. The next time I woke up, I felt something pressed against my forehead. It took a few minutes before I tried to realize what was happening, but I was still at a loss. I raised my right hand and saw nothing but tubes, just as I had in my left. A dark-haired angel with olive skin was wetting my lips and pouring a few drops of liquid into my open mouth. I must have looked like a bird trying to get a juicy worm. Don't try to talk. You have been in an accident and are in the hospital. Don't try to lift your head up, just relax. Do you know your name? She asked. I heard the question and understood it. It's just that my body wasn't responding, and I couldn't answer. I got frustrated, and the next thing I knew, I was back in a la 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 land. And I had actually managed to push everyone to the curb and beyond. That is, everyone but me. The driver eventually tried to tear out of his seat, but ended up kicking me in both legs while I was in the air, pushing everyone back. The impact made me spin like a wolf, and I crashed head and body into the side of his car. I ended up with 2 broken legs, 4 cracked ribs, a punctured lung, a concussion and broken nose, and a bunch of scrapes and bruises. I was a mess. The teacher said I yelled out Anne's name just before I passed out and fell into a 15-day coma. The nurse told me I came out of it, but 2 minutes later, I was out for another 5 days. I had no identification on me, and my face was swollen and badly scratched. The local news station was running a story about a local hero who had risked his life to save the class and the first-grade teacher. No one knew who I was, and they were asking the public to help identify me. They listed my landmarks, but never published a picture of my face because it was in such a mess, but no one responded. Tammy was eating dinner and watching the news when they asked again for help identifying the hero runner. When she heard that he was near a large Catholic church on 10th Street, she set her fork aside. That's our route, she said to herself. After skipping most of the story, she called the news station. Runner, she asked. Could you give me his description again? He's about 170, 11 centimeters tall, brown hair, weighs about 175 pounds, Tammy was told. Do you think you know who he is? They asked. I need to make a quick call. I'll call you back, she replied. Pick up the phone, damn it! Pick up the phone! She yelled into the receiver. Screw it, she said as she ran out of the apartment, jumping in her car and driving away. Please, 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 please don't be who I think you are, she said to herself as she pulled up to Steve's house. His car was parked outside the garage, and after knocking on the door for 5 minutes, she tried to look in the windows. Can I help you? The man asked as she walked back to the house. Have you seen Steve lately? I'm a friend of his, and there's no way I can find him, she explained. Last I heard he was out of town for a couple weeks, but that was a long time ago. The last 2 times I've mowed his lawn, but I haven't seen any fur or pelt. It's too bad he and Miss broke up. He took it really hard, he told me. Do you have a key to his house? I asked. I have a key, but only for emergencies. Take my word for it, this is an emergency, Tammy said loudly. It looked like someone had gone to get a newspaper and hadn't returned. Coffee was brewed, but not started. Bagels and butter were on the kitchen table, and the bathroom light was still on. What hospital is he in? Asked Tammy, writing down the news and getting ready to leave again. Just lock up. I have a bad feeling I know where Steve is, she said as she pulled away. His face was still swollen and puffy from his broken nose. The cuts had already begun to heal, and it didn't take Tammy more than a minute to recognize him. He mentioned Anne's name several times and is no longer in a coma, but he hasn't fully regained consciousness yet, his personal nurse told Tammy. When he was in a coma, the church sent someone to read to him every day, and now they're paying for his care. He's kind of our local celebrity, the nurse said with a smile as she gently brushed his hair off his forehead. His name is Stephen Moore, and he lives at 1725 Southeast 12th Street, I told her while she wrote everything down. I gave her the name of the company he works for and told her that Anne is his ex-wife. I gave her my name and phone number and asked her to keep me updated on his condition. I can't believe no one noticed Steve was missing. Hell, didn't his job even bother to check on him when he didn't show up? What about his kids? Then I remembered that after the divorce, Steve no longer had any contact with them since they took Anne's side in the divorce. I was going to call them when I got home, but the news channel beat me to it. Breaking news, one of the evening newscasts blared. The hero of St. Mary's Church has been identified as Stephen Moore of Orlando, Florida, the spokesman announced. He is still at Mercy Hospital recovering from his injuries. The only word he uttered after his heroic act was the name Anne. So, Anne, if you're out there somewhere, Steve is looking for you. Even national news outlets picked up this story. I guess everyone wanted to hear the good news. Everyone found out about it almost immediately. Steve's family and friends called each other and converged on the hospital, where they were greeted by an absolutely furious Tammy. He was in a coma for 30 days and no one missed him? What kind of family does he have? She yelled at them as they all made one excuse or another. All he wanted was his perfect life back, his 2 sons and the wife he loved more than life. And you, instead of talking to him and trying to work things out, blindly threw him in the trash. You all make me sick. So go home to your beautiful lives and leave him alone because none of you deserve him. I think he's shown everyone what he's made of, and so have you, she said as she walked back to his room. They chatted for a while, talking to the doctor and giving the hospital all the medical information they needed. Tammy was sitting at his bedside holding his hand when Anne entered the room. "Get out of here!" Tammy shouted to her. "You gave up on him. He's no longer your husband to kick. So go back to your boyfriend and your beautiful new life, because God knows I'm going to drop you where you stand if you don't get out of here in the next 10 seconds," Tammy said, getting to her feet. Anne cried and walked out. She talked to the doctor, gave him her cell phone and work number, and asked him to be sure to let her know of any changes in his condition. Then she drove to his house, and an elderly neighbor met her as she pulled up in front of the house. "Well, isn't this an event? Steve put his life on the line, saving all those kids without even thinking about the consequences. When he gets out, all the neighbors are going to throw him a big party. I heard his teacher visits him every day after the accident. She calls him her knight in shining armor. I guess I can't blame her," he told me. I asked if he had a key to the house and if he would let me in. "I think it'll be fine. Everyone was surprised when you two broke up. Your husband took it very hard, but I think you already knew that." He let me into the house and left. I had no idea what I was even doing in Steve's house. I hadn't been back since he'd changed the locks and Kenny had taken all my stuff. Nothing had changed. Hell, even the empty hangers were still on the living room floor where he'd thrown my clothes. I went upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. Other than the absence of my clothes, it was exactly the same except for a few holes in the wall that Steve had probably taken out his anger on. Opening the night table drawer, I found that all my stuff was still there, and Steve's stuff was stacked on loose sheets of notebooks. I sat down on the bed, picked up his pillow, brought it up to my face and smelled it. It was Steve's scent, and I continued to hold it to my chest. I placed the pillow against the headboard and lay on his side of the bed, looking up at the ceiling. What made me grab the top notebook, I'll never know. I just grabbed it and opened it. It was Steve's last journal. "I never knew," was all Anne said to herself as she began to read the outpouring of emotion that Steve had spewed onto the paper. His heart and soul were laid out in those 4 notebooks. It took me almost 3 days of non-stop reading to read all 4. About halfway through, I thought maybe I shouldn't read them, but I couldn't stop. He talked about our life together, the good times and the not-so-good times, the breakup. I had no idea that he loved me so much and how much I had hurt him for the past 14 months. I never knew about his depression or his plans to retire. I cried until my tear ducts were empty. I cursed myself as he wrote that he forgave me but couldn't forget what I had done. By the end of the week, I returned to the house and retrieved his journals. Walking down the stairs to his room, I turned on his computer. Hell, he hadn't even changed his password when I logged into his AOL account and checked his email. I deleted all the junk and made a note to call his boss tomorrow. When I saw the email I had sent him all those months ago, I started crying again. He had saved it, and when I opened the picture, I thought I was going to die. I sent it just to hurt him as much as possible, and I guess I succeeded. I almost deleted it, but it wasn't my computer anymore, and I wasn't even allowed in the house, let alone Steve's computer. Day by day, I got better. The bandage was removed from my left eye, and my nose had to be straightened with surgery. My ribs were healing, as were my legs, but under the cast, they itched like a son of a bitch. Fortunately, I only had a mild concussion and no brain swelling, but I'm not back to normal yet. The doctor said the best thing for my body was to stay in a coma. It had time to heal on its own without me moving. My personal nurse, Debbie, was waiting impatiently for me. I no longer required round-the-clock care, so she took care of my needs during my waking hours. And the only time I felt uncomfortable was when she gave me sponge baths. When she started lowering me below the waist, I always got turned on, but apparently I was getting better. I tried to apologize once, but she told me not to worry about it. If you couldn't tense up, then there would be something to worry about, she said with a wink and a smile. I guess she was right. Tammy came by almost every day after work, as did Connie, the teacher I'd rescued. She brought thank you notes from all the kids and said that when I got better, they would all come to the hospital to visit me. She was a single mom of about 41 years old with a 12-year-old girl. I told her she didn't have to come every day, but she insisted. You've given me and my daughter a second chance. It's the least I can do to make sure you are comfortable and your needs are met. Connie came in every day at 4 o'clock and read to me for about an hour. Somehow I felt calm and relaxed with her, and her pleasant appearance only increased my anticipation of her daily visits. Tammy would come around 6:30 and usually brought her dinner. I had to eat hospital food, but every once in a while she would sneak me a Big Mac. I gained about 8 pounds and it all went to my bowels. We chatted about this and that, and she was usually gone by 8 o'clock. I never saw my kids or my ex-wife, but Tammy said Anne looked in on me from time to time. What do you mean the cane? Shouted I to the doctor. Can't you have another surgery? I asked. Your right leg was broken in 2 places and is healing fine, but your left leg was really messed up. You have 2 pins holding it all together, and we still have to go back later to take out a bunch of bone splinters. Steve, I'm just telling you about the worst case scenario, that's all, he explained to me. Sorry, but I'm not buying it. Doc, I'm a runner and have been all my life. I don't have much of a life outside of this room, and now you're telling me I can't even do this anymore. I won't accept that, I told him. What else could go wrong? The work was going great. The team tightened up, and I told them more than once how much I appreciated it. Kathy kept me in the loop, and the 2 of us got everything done on time. My checks were going into my savings account, but none of my bills had been paid in the last couple months. I guess I wasn't thinking clearly about who else should be paying my bills, but me. When the bank sent a foreclosure letter and informed me that my insurance company had dropped me, I was furious. It only took one call to each of them to explain my dilemma. Do you really want to be known as the company that abandoned me when I was in a coma after saving 10 small children? I said to the insurance company. I used the same line with the mortgage company, and they even went so far as to waive all late fees. However, it was time to make decisions, especially regarding the house. The next day, I contacted a realtor and put it up for sale. Anne was going to get half, but it was time to end the loss and move on with my life. At 10 weeks, I was sent home with a nurse. Guess who? Since there was no one at home to take care of me, Debbie was assigned to take care of me. She moved into the guest room and only stayed there at night when I was in trouble. Tammy and Connie still came to see me in the evenings, even though I told them it wasn't necessary. Kenny called and Jimmy came to see me the day after I got home. They both apologized for not being there for me. I told them to forget about it, which I did. But I told them I'd put the house on the market. You can't sell the house, Dad. Where are you going to live? They asked. I'll find an apartment close to work, and in a couple years I'll move south anyway. Have you talked to your mom about that? Asked Kenny. I haven't talked to your mom since last year. Why the hell would I talk to her now? I asked. Please just leave her out of this, okay? I already know what she thinks of me. Friday night, Tammy, Connie, and her daughter Rebecca had a pajama party. We had pizza, beer, and pecan pie. I wasn't allowed to drink beer because of the painkillers, but I had 2 mugs anyway. It wasn't until 10:30 that I found out the real reason for the sleepover. Tammy had taken Rebecca to the store to restock the fridge, and Connie had burst into my room in a fit that would have raised a dead man. I know it's been a long time, and I know you can't do much, but I have to do this for you today. Connie, you don't have to do that, I replied. I know that, but I want to, she said. We got busy, but later we had to stop when the other guests came back. When the cast came off, it was both a relief and a weight. To start, I was scheduled for physical therapy 3 days a week. I would arrive at the clinic in a cab, let them bring me to tears, and then go home. My therapist was a large woman who was merciless and took no prisoners. She would push me to my limits and more. So you're a runner? She asked. Why are you such a wimp? Will you ever want to run again? Or will you settle for a pair of crutches? She said, mocking me. Like I said, I worked myself to tears and then worked some more. I'll show myself to that damn doctor, I kept telling myself. Mom wants to see you, was all Kenny said on the phone. Why? How the hell should I know? He replied. Do you ever want to see me again? I asked. If so, quit the damn games. You're not on my list of favorite people right now, and if you keep shitting on me, you'll be off the list altogether. So let me ask the question again. What the hell does she want? You. She's watching you from afar, working with doctors and therapists on your rehabilitation. She's afraid to talk to you because of everything that happened before and after the divorce, that's all. So what should I tell her? Have her come in Saturday morning after 10 o'clock and I'll talk to her. Hell, maybe I'll even be nice to her, I told my son. Friday night, Connie had some business to attend to, and Tammy stopped by on her way to see her. Anne wants to see me, I told her. I know. I've been talking to her for the last couple months, she replied. And you didn't tell me? Shortly after your accident and after I was socializing with your family, she stopped by to see me. She apologized for the scene at the gym, and after that we started communicating. She had been keeping tabs on you and wanted to know your condition on a daily basis. Before or after having fun with her current boyfriend? That's a question for the two of you. I suggested she talk to you herself. That's why she's coming tomorrow, Tammy told me. I know you have mixed feelings about her, so you need to ask yourself all the hard questions tonight. I'd love to stay, but that's something you have to do for yourself. So have a good night, don't get too drunk, and I'll see you tomorrow afternoon for all the details, she said as she kissed my cheek and ran off. I took Tammy's words to heart and didn't get too drunk. Enough not to feel anew the pain Anne had caused me. Enough so that all the anger I'd held inside for so long couldn't flare up again. I was drunk enough not to carry my journals downstairs and burn them in the fireplace. Finally, I was drunk enough to fall asleep at 10:15 and get a full night's rest. The pain in my leg woke me up at 7:30, and 2 painkiller pills later, I was already making coffee and eating breakfast. By 9 o'clock, I was already sitting on a rented exercise machine in the basement, trying to get my leg to work the way it was supposed to work and not having the slightest bit of luck. When I heard the front doorbell ring, it took me almost 5 minutes to get out of the torture chamber and up the stairs. Come on in, I said to Anne, waddling into the kitchen for a bottle of water. Can I get you anything? I asked. Not right now. Taking cold water from the refrigerator, I walked back to the kitchen table and slumped into a chair, wiping the sweat from my forehead with a towel. Enough exercise for today, I said, drinking a third of the bottle. Well, Anne, it's up to you what you want to talk about. About us, Steve, she began. Anne, we're not here. You put that out of your mind a year ago, or have you forgotten? I remembered, and I've regretted my decision ever since. It doesn't sound like you regretted it much when you were having fun with Tom and decided to share your experiences with me. I hope he was worth all the hassle, I said sarcastically. I think I deserved it. I was so mad at you for your little games that I think I lost my mind for a while. I'm sorry for what I did. You don't need to tell me how sorry you are or apologize for what you did. That's for people who care. And I don't anymore, I said to a surprised Anne. If that's all you have to say, it was nice. But I have a lot of things to do today, and it takes me forever to get them done now. Can't you give us another chance? Don't you have any feelings for me left at all? Asked Anne. I have. For a very long time, even after your graphic letter. But when you kept piling them up and poking my nose in them every chance you got, you kind of killed it all. But I read your journals. Everything you wrote about us. The past and our future together. Everything, spoke Anne when I interrupted her. You read my diaries? How did they get into your hands? I asked. When you were in the hospital, I went to the house and found them. I didn't know what they were until I started reading them. I never knew you loved me so much, and was all she could manage to utter. Get out. Get the hell out of my house. You don't live here anymore, remember? You left me. I yelled at her. Go back to your boyfriend or boyfriends and stay away from me. I shouted at her, getting up and trying to walk out of the kitchen before my leg gave out and I collapsed on the floor. Let me help you, Anne said, holding out her hand as I lay on the floor. I don't need your damn help. Don't you think you've done enough to me already? I spat back at her, trying to get up and falling down again. This time, however, I felt a sharp pain in my leg as I rolled over. Please go away. Anne, leave me the hell alone, I said, lying on my back like a turtle that couldn't get up. I heard her start to cry as she ran out of the kitchen. The front door slammed shut, and I was alone again both inside and outside. I lay like that for at least 15 minutes before I tried to get up again. I crawled on my stomach and my only good knee to the couch and then dragged my busted ass onto it. I was sweating like a pig as I either passed out from the pain or fell back into a coma. When I opened my eyes, I knew exactly where I was this time. You're not listening to me, are you? The doctor said to me as we moved toward the operating room. You broke one pin and messed up your leg even worse than before, he told me. Lucky for you, I was here when they brought you in. So relax, you know what to do, and I'll see you tonight. Waking up in the ward, I saw the same nurse I'd first seen a few months ago. You couldn't get away from me? She asked. I missed the gourmet meals and sponge baths, that's all, I replied, trying to distract myself. Relax, get some sleep, and I'll be there for you when you get to your room. Tammy read me the riot act and pulled me apart on one side and the other as soon as she walked through the door. I leave you alone for one damn minute, and you end up back in the hospital. Don't you think I have nothing better to do than babysit your ass in this place? She yelled at me. Not really, I said with a smile. She laughed. I laughed a laugh that hurt like hell. I found you on the couch with a pin sticking out of your leg. You were bleeding like a piglet. You're just lucky I got here early and found out about your meeting with Anne. If I hadn't, you could have lost that damn leg, and then who would be running around with me? Said Tammy, slapping my arm. Now that we got that shit sorted out, what happened to Anne that put you back in the hospital? Nothing much. She wanted to get back together and apologize for putting me through hell, that's all, I told her. And? So what? I replied. And what the hell did you say to her? Asked Tammy. What do you think I told her? I told her to leave me alone. That's what I told her. And what did you actually say to her? You've been pining for her for the last year. I know you didn't fail. You couldn't have been that stupid. Tell me you didn't fail a second time? Tammy said this with a look on her face. Maybe I was a little mean to her, especially after she said she read my journals. Can you believe she read them? I asked. Steve, I read your damn diaries. When I was looking after your apartment, I found them and read them in one weekend. They were very good. For heaven's sake, hasn't anyone read them? Maybe we should publish them in the paper. Then everyone would be aware of my business, I said with irritation in my voice. Well, if you didn't want anyone to read them, you should have put them away. They were in my damn bedroom, on my night table. I don't remember inviting you or Anne into my bedroom for light reading. Has Connie read them yet? Or are you planning to photocopy them for her? Who put a burr under your saddle? Okay, I invaded your privacy. I'm sorry. Get over it. How long are you going to lie down this time? She asked. I have no idea. My doctor will come by tonight and let me know. I'm really starting to get tired of this place. This time it's your fault. Do you need anything from home? Asked Tammy. Just my master magazine, if you don't mind. Unopened, please, I said with a smile. Looks like I have you for another 2 or 3 weeks, said the doctor, looking at my x-rays. After that, I'll let you go home if, and only if, you sit in that damn chair all day. If not, I'll just keep you here until I exhaust the limit of your health insurance. I'll be on my best behavior, or at least well enough that you won't catch me, I said, trying to add some humor. No jokes this time. One more stupid move like last time and you'll be walking around on crutches for the rest of your life. I heard it loud and clear. No more games and no more pulling. The price was too high. Connie has a new boyfriend and she's afraid to tell you, Tammy said Friday night. She kind of has a crush on you, but she realized it was because you saved her life. After our pajama party, she realized you were too old and she felt guilty. She met a nice guy and they've been dating for the last month, so she hasn't been around as much. She told me she was going to tell you tonight. So don't be a jerk like you were with Anne. She's feeling bad enough as it is. Connie came in about 15 minutes later. I need to talk to Steve alone, she told Tammy. As we watched Tammy leave, Connie had this solemn look on her face. Calm down, Connie. It's not that bad this time. In a couple weeks, I'll be running the streets by now, I told her. Steve, I need to tell you something, but I don't know where to start, she said, looking at me. Connie, let me fill in the blanks. You found someone special, right? She nodded affirmatively. And you feel bad about what I did? Don't. I didn't set out to do what I did, and I don't expect you to obey me for the rest of your life. You've been given a second chance, use it wisely, but use it. Life is too short to waste another minute on an old dumbass like me. So get out of here and live. However, if you do tie the knot, I expect an invitation, I said with a smile. Connie kissed me and promised to stay in touch. As she walked past my bed, I did give her a spank on her ass, though. Tell your boyfriend for me that if he doesn't treat you right, I'm coming after him, I yelled as she walked away. You're a good man, Steve, Tammy said as she came back into my room. She left here with a smile on her face and in a huff. Then why do I feel so bad? Don't worry, honey. You didn't lose a lover. You gained a friend for life. Tam, why don't you get out of here and go home? You probably have a million things to do besides sitting with me. I got my journal and I have to make some entries. Go home, go out, get laid, do something fun for a change. I think my baby needs some alone time, Tam said, kissing me on the lips for the first time ever. I'll check on you on Sunday. Maybe sneak you a beer. Want one? Go ahead. Now, I said, throwing a pillow at her. I spent most of the next day and a half writing in my journal. My psychiatrist would have been proud of me. I thought long and hard about my life, about where I wanted to go and who I wanted to go with, before I finally put the book down at 2 a.m. on Sunday. I only stopped because Debbie came in, took my journal, and told me it was nighttime. 5 more minutes, I begged. Steve, don't make me be hard on you. You need rest if you expect to get out of this place. Don't make me sponge you again, she said with a smile on her face as she approached me with a wet sponge. Tammy snuck a Big Mac and a Corona in an empty ginger ale bottle. You could say heaven, because that's what it tasted like. She stood guard at the door to the room until I was done. We cleaned out the bottle, and I had a few mints to mask my breath. Thanks, I needed that, I said, getting comfortable on the bed. Getting ready for the next chapter of my life. How long, Tammy? I asked, looking at her sitting in the chair next to my bed. How long what? How long have you had these feelings for me? I asked again. A long time. About a month after you first asked me to flirt with you. Why didn't you say anything? It took me a while to put 2 and 2 together, and then I couldn't believe it myself. What are you, 42, 43? 47, but thanks for the ego boost, she said, holding my hand. I was so jealous of Anne. You put so much effort into getting her back, and she didn't care. She went out of her way to get back at you, and for what? Because you tried to put the spark back in your marriage. I'd kill for a man like you to come after me. My husband died 15 years ago and took a piece of me with him. You are the first man I can say he can replace me, among other things. I didn't know at first, but the more time we spent together, I felt something. But I thought I was just imagining it, I told her. You weren't supposed to know. Hell, I didn't fully realize it until I found you in the hospital, fresh out of your coma. I was so angry at them, all of them. I was just seething. I read them the riot act, and when Anne came into the room to see you, I completely lost my temper. I told her that she had thrown you away and that you no longer belonged to her to abuse you. That's when I realized for the first time that I wanted you. I wanted to be your Anne. But I'm much older than you. Like I told Connie, why should you like an old fart like me? How many old farts do you know who can run 20 miles? How many old farts would give their lives to save a bunch of strangers? How many of them would go to the ends of the earth for a loved one? Not too many, I guess. I'm not asking you to sweep me off my feet, hell, Steve. You can't even walk yet, but just think about it. That's all. With a kiss, Tammy left, and I was left alone again. The second time in 3 days to think about what I wanted. For the next 2 weeks, Tammy was constantly in my hospital room. When the doctor came in to check on me, he seemed to be talking more to Tammy than to me. You have to keep your husband at a distance if he wants his leg to heal, he told Tammy. I'm not Steve's wife, just a friend, she replied. Sorry about that. It's just that your name is listed on his chart as the first point of contact, and I just assumed, he said, trying to backtrack. No, I'm not married to Steve or anyone else. A week before I was to be released, the doctor came into my room and read me the riot act one last time. Here's a list of what he can and can't do. He needs to exercise his leg, but make sure he doesn't overdo it. Here's my business card with my home phone number, he said, holding it out to Tammy. Call me anytime, day or night, if you have any questions or anything else you might need. 2 weeks later, I was home again, sitting in my torture chamber trying to strengthen my leg. At the end of the second month, I had made more than a little progress, but I wasn't overdoing it. As I turned on my iPod and cranked up the music, I didn't hear her come downstairs. She watched me for a few minutes before saying something. If you get too hard, you'll end up back in the hospital, and I'll have to babysit your ass again, she yelled loud enough for me to hear her over the music. The doctor said I can start on the other leg in 2 weeks, and I plan to try it out on the street by Christmas. What do you think? You'll never learn, will you? Yes, my angel, I said. Tammy and her boyfriend are coming over for dinner, and I'm going to need your help. I started to say something about my leg injury, but she interrupted me. Remember who you're talking to, she said as she walked up the stairs. She didn't entertain my objections, as she was now as much in control here as she was at work. You see, she had seen me at my worst and loved me for who I really was. It didn't hurt that she was an animal in bed too. Tammy wasn't happy when I told her that I just wanted to be her BFF. I told her that the age difference was just one issue, and that I cared more about her as a friend than as a potential lover or life partner. However, one night we did test each other's mettle. When she asked if I was going to go back to Anne, I just shook my head. You see, Anne wanted me back because I was easy. I was predictable, and she knew she could always count on me to do whatever she wanted. Anne knew she had made some mistakes, but figured we could both forget them. However, I still couldn't get that picture of her and Tom out of my head, even when I erased it from my computer. Everyone told me that I had made a huge mistake by not going back to Anne, but it was my mistake. Jimmy and I still talk every week. He told me to follow my heart. I followed his advice. My decision was already made anyway. When my house was sold, I moved in with Debbie. Her apartment wasn't very big, and I ended up getting rid of 75% of my old furniture. You see, she had a big double bed, and for more than a few weekends we never left the bedroom. I guess you could say, we lived for love. After one of her famous sponge baths, we took things to the next level more than once. The last 2 weeks in the hospital were hardly the best 2 weeks of my life. We had plenty of time to talk and get to know each other better. We had more than a few things in common, and our differences didn't even reach a fraction of a percent. She was just what the doctor ordered. Speaking of doctors, that's who Tammy was seeing now. The doctor who did both surgeries on my feet. Even after we talked, she was always there for me, and so was the doctor. It got to the point where he started talking to her instead of me when he entered the room. Then there was coffee at the hospital restaurant, then a movie, then dinner, and then, well, I guess I don't have to paint you a picture, do I? Now I walk Tammy on the weekends and hope to do my first 5K run in 2 months, with Debbie's permission. As I've said before, Debbie rules the ball. She's never let me forget that if I mess up, she'll kick my ass, and if I don't believe her, she'll just give it a try. Am I happy? Yes. Do I plan to marry Debbie? Not now, maybe in the future when we move to Sarasota. Would I do it all again? No way in hell. The end. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video. I looked at the woman who had helped my wife slide off her buddy. What the hell is wrong with you, Dee? I thought you were our friend. We talked about what it would mean if a spouse cheated. We were all in agreement, and now this? Oh, he's famous. So it's okay. You'll get over it quickly. I always thought you were a bit stupid, but I underestimated your idiocy. By a wide margin. I want you to do one thing for me. Don't ever talk to me again. Ever again. You wouldn't like it if you did. If I'm in the water and I go down for the 3rd time and you walk by, keep going. I'd rather die. Now get away from me. It was easy to see that she was out of it. I had never come close to talking to someone in our circle like that. I turned and started to walk towards the door when I was intercepted by a huge bouncer. Is the night over already? Get out of my way. He smirked. Oh, drunk and belligerent. I think for everyone's sake you should just turn around and go back to your table. Have some drinks, I'll make sure they're on the house. I glared at him until he started to get a little nervous. How much is he paying you to intervene? Hopefully a lot, because if you don't get out of my way right this damn minute, you're going to need every penny. His eyes widened and he pouted slightly. You can't have me. I'll wipe the floor on your sorry ass and not break a sweat. More than likely, but you should know something. I don't fight fair and I don't forgive. If you do beat me up, be sure to finish me off, because when I recover, I'm coming after you. You'll have to think twice before you go out in the dark for the rest of your life. Maybe I'll just hire a couple guys and be 1,000 miles away when it happens. Maybe I'll pay them a little extra to make sure your career as a club security guard is over. If I can't get to you, then you married? Parents? You'll be sick every time you look at them when I'm done. So you have a choice. Move. He didn't notice as he stepped back. Funny, really, that he was at least 6'55" tall and weighed about 300. I had 5'11" and 180 in me, and I was willing to bet he had a much better fat-to-muscle ratio than I did. I had something he didn't. Pure, unadulterated nuclear rage. It couldn't be beaten. I was almost to the door when someone grabbed my arm. I clutched at the hand and spun around, dragging the person holding me away. When I realized it was Janie, I let her go. I was about to walk away when she grabbed my leg. Don't do this! Think about your kids. I looked at her with all the contempt I was capable of. You mean like she did when she slipped out the back door with that asshole? As for family, I don't have any anymore. I'll always be good to my kids, unlike that bitch who used to be my wife. Maybe I'll file for custody in the divorce. After all, her actions today prove she's an unfit mother. She let go of him and covered her mouth with her hand. I made it to the elevator before another volley rang out. Bob, think about this. Are you really going to throw away 10 years because of one night? I looked at my former friend and his gang. I didn't throw away a damn thing. She did. Look me in the eye and tell me you think what she did was acceptable. Every one of you assholes, look at me. I want each and every one of you to tell me that you don't think what she did was so bad, and that if your wife had done that, everything would have been fine. Oops, sorry, Harry. That ship has already sailed. You know she's seeing him again, don't you? Harry threw a glance at Erica, and she hung her head and walked back to the clubhouse. The others were yelling, mostly at each other, and I took the opportunity to slip into the elevator. It didn't take me long to pack. I left Linda's shit where it was. If she wanted it, she could come and get it. I was discharged 30 minutes later and had already reached the parking lot when I heard them. Apparently, my friends were waiting for me. They started arguing, and Eric stood in front of my car door. You have until I turn this thing on to get out of the way. Anyone who doesn't will be sprawled across the parking lot. Move it. Now. You'll listen to us. That was all he had time to say before I put my fist into his gut. None of them were fighters, and none of them had learned how to defend themselves. But I had, because when I was a teenager I had a temper and got into fights a lot. I got in trouble with the law a couple of times because of that, and when it came to counseling or juvie, I went to a few sessions. It really helped me with my anger control issues. I still lost my temper but rarely lost control. And right now I didn't care. I walked over and unlocked my door, looking back at them. I shifted into gear and stepped on the gas, ripping forward with a screech of tires. They scattered like quail. I had no idea where I was going or what I was going to do when I got there. She'd been gone for almost an hour by then, so she was probably already having fun with him. My first inclination was to find them and leave them both in a pool of blood, but I doubted that would happen for a number of reasons. The guy was the #1 tight end for the local pro football team, and they pinned their hopes of bringing home a winning season this year, maybe taking them to the championship, on his ability. He had just signed a 3-year contract worth $106 million, on top of the millions he had already made. His house will probably be locked up tighter than Fort Knox. Besides, I wasn't a martial arts expert or a former Navy SEAL. I was just a guy. A guy in decent shape, but still just a guy. I had no access to unlimited wealth, no friends in high or low circles. I was sitting at a stoplight, and then it hit me. There was something I could do, and now was the time to start doing it. I realized that if I went forward, there would be no turning back. I stopped in front of a late-night diner that advertised free Wi-Fi. Before I started, I thought about my plan. If I wanted revenge, social media was the way to go. Linda had every imaginable account. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even something called TikTok. I wasn't an IT nerd. I could barely get online, but I knew someone who could. My niece. She had just turned 18 and had 4 scholarship offers. 2 from Ivy League schools and 2 from technical colleges on both coasts. I called her and she was very surprised to hear from me so late. But when I told her I would give her $500 if she would come and help me, she was very interested. I was about to tell her where I was when I heard the ping. Got it, Unc. We'll be there in 7 minutes. I wondered who "we" was, but as long as she was walking, I didn't care. While I waited, I went inside and asked the waitress for a quiet booth as far away from people as possible. Then I surprised her. You close at midnight, don't you? She nodded. Tell me how many customers you'll have from the time you close and how much to tip. While you're thinking, let me tell you that 2 of my friends are coming over soon, and I'd like the place to be as crowded as possible. Tell the owner I'll make up for lost profits if he'll let us sit here and work for an hour or 2. And another $200 for you if you keep bringing in sodas and coffee. She grinned. It's the end of February and it's damn cold outside. Everyone who plugged in is hanging out somewhere or staying home. I'll close right now. I can get away with it since I own the place. Give me $400, 3 for me and 1 for my cook. Do you need anything before I send him home? Just at this time, my niece came in, and a lad was with her. I almost didn't recognize her. She seemed to have really cleaned up her act. I immediately apologized. I'm sorry, guys. If I had known you had plans, I never would have asked you to come. I'm sure you'll think my wishes are crazy, but hear me out. First, let me tell you what happened. When I had finished, they looked at me with their jaws dropped. Nanette hissed indignantly. Let me tell you. Your wife, my aunt, left you alone in a club to spend the night with some superstar jock, and your friends covered for her while she pulled away? What kind of assholes do you hang out with? Those are uncharted waters for me. They're actually her friends, the bunch she ran around with in high school and college. She was beyond thrilled when my company wanted to move me to this place. As we drove away, she would show Chicago in her rearview mirror. I had been around them for a long time and thought we had the same outlook on life. I can assure you that we are no longer friends. Let me tell you what I want, and you tell me what a terribly bad idea it is and how much trouble I'll get in if I do it. I told them what I wanted, and Eric and Nanette looked at each other and then burst into laughter. When they came to their senses, Nanette asked Eric to get the black box out of the car. The black box turned out to be an unregistered laptop that she had slightly modified. No one will be able to trace it. I'll call stations all over the world and I won't be on hold for longer than half a second at anyone. It's something I've been working on since I was 13 and kept secret until I was of age and could get a patent on it. That explains a lot of why all these schools are out to get me, and the military offered me a very lucrative offer to skip college and go straight to work for them. Nanette asked all sorts of questions as she set everything up. I got it, she exclaimed, showing me my wife's Facebook screen. I'm in. Let the chaos begin. They scrolled through her posts, stopping to ask who the different people were while Nanette made notes on her phone. When a picture of her best friend and a strange coordinator popped up on the screen, I almost lost my senses. Then a thought occurred to me, and I gave her the names of my so-called friends who were with us. She had all the accounts up in a matter of minutes. Nanette grinned, looking at Dee. She has something to show me. Are you ready? Make it as disgusting as possible. Eric was quiet for a moment. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no turning back. You're throwing a grenade into your marriage. I'm sure. Ever since this started, I don't think about anything else. There's no way in hell I could live with her again. She threw a grenade. In response, I'm going to DEFCON 4 and considering nuclear options. Get started. Nanette began typing, pretending to be my wife. Exciting update. I am proud to announce that I have officially joined the CCC, the Celebrity Club. It's her invention. Sounds luscious yet cool. I'm with Mark. I'm happy to say that he has a really tight end and can really ram it in when he finds a hole to slip into. I'm so proud that he picked me out of all the women in the club. Thanks to my girlfriend for stepping in to talk to my husband while I was slipping away. I'd say I owe you a debt of gratitude, but I've done the same for her before. Remember the girls' weekend in Atlantic City, Dee? You scored on a hockey player, and according to you, he actually knows how to score pucks. Ha ha! After that, Nanette displayed a bunch of smiley faces. Then she started again. Right now we're resting, so to speak, at halftime. We'll start the second half soon. Hopefully it will go into overtime. She then forged messages from all the women who were at the club, giving her literal high fives and telling her they couldn't wait for their time with the stud. Janie chastised her husband for being a patsy on the needles. He doesn't have to be rich, he just has to be strung out and last more than 5 minutes. She found some pictures of the asshole and posted them, as well as some pictures of Linda. It was almost midnight by then, but the notifications were lighting up as people were looking at the posts. I'm sure there were phones ringing in her social circle despite the late hour. Nanette then lit up Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I wasn't worried about her getting calls because I was sure she had her phone turned off and I couldn't interfere with her plans. The comments started pouring in. Is this a joke? I bet your husband doesn't think it's funny. What the hell is going on with you? This was her favorite aunt speaking. I wondered in bewilderment why she was still awake. Nanette replied. This is no joke. I saw an opportunity and took it. How many can boast of having slept with someone famous? If you don't believe me, come to his house tomorrow around 10 o'clock. 130 Wyndham Circle. It's a bloody mansion. The rich really are different. Maybe we'll be up by then and you can see my walk of shame as I walk out of his house. Or maybe it's a walk of fame. Another person has joined this thread. I didn't know her, but it didn't matter. She had over 700 friends, and all of them were on the rumor mill. Really? You're proud of leaving your husband? Do you really think your marriage will survive this? I love my husband. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. And he loves me, so I know he'll get through this. There might be a little hardship, but I'll do my best to spoil him and he'll forgive me in the end. It doesn't mean anything. It's just one night and I'll never repeat it. Really? Are you drunk? As for never doing it again, did you ever think you'd do it the first time? You're delusional. I'm giving up on you as a friend. Don't try to contact me. I hope in the light of day you still think it was worth it. It may be all you have left to hang on to. I finally recognized the name. It was her boss's wife. That gave me another idea, and Nanette posted the whole thing on the company page. I bet she'll have some interesting conversations on Monday. Another person replied. It's all just nonsense, isn't it? If you think it's funny, you're wrong. Every word of it is true. We're going to be fine. I have faith in my husband. How did he believe in you? I think the only explanation is that you were hit by a Martian horror ray. I've seen some stupid decisions before, but this tops them all. It's almost Darwin Award level, but it usually ends in death. But maybe the death of your marriage will vindicate you. I'm with Rosalind. I'm leaving you. Don't try to reply because you will be blocked. God help you. This was from her first cousin. She lived in another state, and I wondered how long it would be before the extended family knew the details. Nanette looked sad. She had always liked Linda. You're destroying her, ripping the foundations of her life out from under her feet. Are you sure you don't want to stop? Not yet. I've got a few more things to do and then I'm done with her. Literally. We sent messages to the team's website, the NFL office, the offices of its charities, the mayor, the city council, all their official websites, and everyone we could think of. Nanette flooded Instagram and Twitter. The posts and comments poured in as fast as they could. Then she found his accounts and did the same. He was considered the paragon of an athlete involved in the community. He had 2 charities and was constantly involved in some form of volunteer work or another. The team and the league loved him. It was time to bring some pain. Eric made inquiries and got the name and number of a sports writer who, for some unknown reason, hated the guy. He was a little pissed about being dragged out of bed, but calmed down when I told him what I had. Eric put a voice scrambler on his phone and I sounded like a woman. Stop whining. I'm giving you an opportunity. Mark is with a married woman right now. He knew she was married because she was with her husband when he pulled her out of the Shadow Lounge tonight. It didn't seem to be the first time he'd done this. Talk to the bouncer if you don't believe me. Her name is Linda Hamilton. She's been married for 10 years and has 2 small children. So much for the NFL poster boy, huh? We later learned that he was furious because the man had pulled the same stunt on him. He and his wife had been separated for almost a year before reconciling, and she was still on shaky ground. Also, it was the off-season. There wasn't much going on in local sports, and that probably made the story more appealing. To be fair, we sent letters to local TV stations and newspapers. I doubted anything would come of it, but Mark was well known and very popular, and the Sharks had to smell blood on the water. By 6 in the morning, there were 2 vans and 1 regular reporter and the paparazzi at the gates of his upscale neighborhood. By 8, someone from the team or central office was beating on his door. He opened it in his robe, and cameras zoomed in from the vantage points the videographers had found. Luck wasn't on their side because behind his back, Linda, also in a robe, was clearly visible. The cameras clicking frantically could be clearly heard. His eyes widened when he saw the reporters, and the man stepped inside and slammed the door shut. The man must have told him the whole story, and Linda immediately opened her Facebook page. That house was a mansion of good brick and timbers, but the scream could be heard even outside the gate. It was the scream of a mortally wounded animal. She furiously tried to close her account but found it had been locked. Nanette later counted them, and it turned out that in the first 6 hours alone, there had been over 3,000 comments on all media platforms. Linda had never been so popular. At 10 o'clock, they finally left the house. Linda had her head covered, but everyone knew who she was. I could hardly believe the coverage, but then again, he was a popular figure and it was a weekend, so the news was slow. She got into the unknown man's car, and he drove around the house, coming out of the driveway. This wasn't their first rodeo, and the paparazzi had spotted that entrance as well. They even managed to get a clear shot of Linda as she drove by. The man drove her home, and I wondered what she thought when she was alone. I picked up the kids from the babysitter and drove them to my parents' house. I wasn't surprised to see her parents there because we were all very close. Both mothers were Facebook friends, so they saw everything. But again, she wasn't alone. 4 cars were stalking her house, and now they had her address. She got out of the car and ran to the front door as the questions rained down on her. Was she his girlfriend now? Had she left her husband for him? Did your husband approve of this? It was a particularly stupid question, but it was asked frequently over the next few weeks. When I talked to her family, it was a little stressful. We know what she did. Everyone in the southern half of the country knows. We also know it wasn't her on Facebook. Judging by her actions, she's not that smart, but she was never suicidal. How could you do that to her? Ask her the same question and get back to me. I had no intention of keeping the kids from her, but I wanted a few days to pass so things could settle down. I stopped where Linda was unlikely to look for me, in the room we'd rented for our romantic affair. The receptionist looked at me strangely when he checked the records, but gave me a room for 3 days. It was pretty funny to run into my former friends checking out of the hotel as I headed to my room to spend the night. I was on adrenaline and rage and had been awake for 30 hours by then. Dee rushed over to me. "You bastard. Do you realize how much you hurt Linda? It was all for nothing, just a fantasy she wanted to fulfill. She would have been the same when she got home." No. She was damaged, and when I have something damaged, I have two choices. I have to decide if it's worth fixing, and if I think the cost is too high or get rid of it. Linda has damaged our marriage beyond resurrection, and it's not worth the emotional cost to repair it. I never slept with that hockey player. So you admit you dated him? From what I understand, you had dinner with him and then went to the dance. Even if you didn't sleep with him, it was a chance to fulfill a fantasy, wasn't it? Hubby will be upset if you tell him, but you can get him to forgive you, can't you? The rest of her group backed away, but at the mention of the hockey player, her husband burst forward. "I'm going to kick your—" As I told the bouncer, I don't fight fair. I fight to win. I hit him right at the junction with his femur, and while he squirmed in pain, I looked down and then at the cameras in the hall. It's all on tape, dude. Your attempt to attack me and my attempt to defend myself. Remember that as a life lesson and focus on what you're going to do with your bitch. I looked around at my former friends. I want you to remember this for the rest of your lives. I'll probably be divorced soon, but I'll bet good money I'm not the only one. You need to think about it and make some kind of decision. I'd wish you luck, but honestly, I hope your lives blow up as much as you helped blow up mine. Despite requests and then demands, I never slept in my old house again. Linda was very angry at first, not understanding why I was reacting this way. It just wasn't that big of a deal. Yes, she may have dumped me in the worst possible way, and then spent the night having fun with a complete stranger, but that was all in the past, and it was time to move on. He was famous, for heaven's sake. It was all over now, so why not get back to normal? Truth be told, she had a thing for the asshole from back in the days when we lived in Chicago and he played there. I used to watch the Bears sometimes, and Linda would watch with me. When the charity poster came out with him on the cover, wearing long knit shorts and nothing else, she bought one. It must have been a dream come true when he asked her to dance. When she realized I wasn't going to just trot home like a good boy, she got bitchy. When she was served with a divorce citing adultery as the reason, she became furious. Linda resorted to every threat she could think of, but I persisted. Linda threw herself on my mercy and was surprised that I didn't have any. She barely held on to her job. It was a very close call, and it took quite a while before her boss told her no more than necessary, and even longer before his wife even acknowledged her presence in the room. We were ordinary people, and it would have stayed that way if it hadn't been for the man she was having fun with. The paparazzi got to the bouncer and waved green under his nose until he sang like a canary. There were at least 3 other incidents at that club alone. Mark liked to party. A lot. I bet he soon regretted not signing with another team when he left Chicago. The Panthers were a Carolina team, and North Carolina is an attachment alienation state. He should have chosen a home outside the state line. My lawyer advised me not to pursue him until the divorce was finalized, but he, his team, and the NFL went into full defense mode. One evening, I opened the door of my new apartment and saw a man with a briefcase in his hands. "Sir, I'd like to talk to—" "Go away." I slammed the door shut and slid the deadbolt back into place. He pounded on the door so hard that I called the police, and they politely asked him to leave. He looked at the security camera I had installed and shook his fist before leaving. I then got a call from the new owner of the team. He introduced himself, and before he could continue, I stopped him. 4 people in the world have my number. How did you get it? He sighed. Does it really matter? Yeah. I hung up, went straight to the phone store, and demanded a new number. This went on for 8 days before I got another call. Sir, I represent the children's charity Go Deep. May I have a moment of your time? I'm sorry, but I already support 3 charities and don't have the funds to get involved in another one. You're having a good day. Wait. I'm not asking you for a donation. In fact, it's just the opposite. I'm willing to offer you a good amount of money. Why do you want to give me money? Sir, the founder and main donor is Mark Leb. I hung up again and blocked his number. They recognized my new email address and sent me long emails about how my actions had hurt the charity and how donations had dropped so much. I couldn't help but respond and called them. So it's my fault that the charity is suffering? How exactly? Your accusations against Mark have tarnished his reputation and are causing him unnecessary suffering. If you would publicly state that you forgive him and your wife for a momentary oversight and allow him to redeem himself, public interest in this case would diminish. Let me be clear about this. This man seduced my wife, in front of me and about 50 witnesses, and the low-level thug he was paying tried to stop me when I tried to go after them. She stayed the night, and while she won't admit to having sex with him, we all know that's what happened. Tell you what, have him make a public statement that he had sex with my wife, even though he knew she was married, and I'll think about it. That wouldn't be in anyone's best interest. Can't we persuade you to leave sleeping dogs lying around? That old hound doesn't sleep. He's growling and foaming at the mouth, just wanting to rip a piece out of someone's ass. I'll tell you what. Let him donate all his money to a scientist to create a form of time travel, get back to my wife, and then we'll talk. In the meantime, if he thinks things are bad now, wait a few days. And don't ever contact me again. What are you? I spoke to Eric and Nanette, complaining about my inability to slam down my cell phone. That had given them an idea, and they had come up with an app that allowed them to do just that. It was an old-fashioned phone sound that you could use when you wanted to hang up. I bet a lot of telemarketers got an unpleasant surprise over the next few months. They patented it or trademarked it or whatever it was to keep other people from making money off of it. They charged $1 per download and put me on the paperwork, saying that although it was their expertise, it was my idea. 33 cents wasn't much when you multiply it 50,000 times in just the first 2 months. Then it turned into serious money. I used it to buy a real house instead of the apartment I was living in, and the kids were happy about it. It broke my heart to leave them, but every time I looked at her, I wished I hadn't killed her on the spot. The poor woman was deluded, seriously deluded. She thought I would just accept what she did and move on with my life. Her favorite refrain was, "It was one night." Yes, it was one night. One night is one night too many. Tell me the truth. You knew I'd never let it happen if I found out early enough, which is why you got your slut girlfriends to step in so you could slip away with your man whore like a thief in the night. Because that's exactly what you were. A thief. You stole our future that night, Linda. And you have no one to blame but yourself and your asshole. You think he's in pain? Hell no, he's not in pain. He's probably laughing about it as we speak. He doesn't care that he ruined a family. She ahed. I almost never raised my voice in anger, and I certainly never said it to the kids or in front of them. Looking back, I don't think I ever did it toward her either. Perhaps that was the problem. She thought I was weak and was afraid I would leave her. The kids didn't take to it very well. Eventually, I sent them to therapy and it started to help. The therapist was careful not to belittle their mother. But she told them that their mother had made a very bad error in judgment and was now reaping the consequences. She invited us to attend a couple of sessions separately, and since I was paying, I got a summary of the sessions. She still denies her guilt and tells the children that although she did something, it wasn't bad enough to divorce her because of it. Your little girl asked her what she did, and she told her that it was an adult matter, and she would realize it in a few years. Your son is only 4 years old, but he memorizes what he sees and hears in the media. She never answered his questions directly, just told him she made a terrible mistake and is trying her best to fix it. I don't think he believed that and has a lot of animosity towards his mother. I was asked the same questions in session, and I answered them as honestly as I could. Yes, son, I am divorcing your mother because of what you have heard. She broke a promise and a commitment by acting this way. You know that when you promise something, you have to fulfill it. When you become an adult, things get a little deeper. She made these promises in front of 200 people, legally and spiritually binding, and she knew full well what would happen if she broke them. But she did it anyway. I still love your mother, but I don't trust her anymore, and trust is the key issue. Let's say I promised to pick you up from school on Wednesdays and I did for a year. Then I missed one and left you where you were. I knew I should have picked you up, but decided I was more interested in doing something else. How many times are you going to stand there waiting for me before you realize you can't trust me to pick you up? Would you believe me if I told you it wouldn't happen again? I think I managed to get through to them a little bit and follow the therapist's instructions exactly. I didn't say anything bad about their mother. I told them that although our relationship had changed, we both loved them very much. Other than that, I didn't talk about their mother unless they brought it up themselves. Linda did the exact opposite. She told the kids that yes, she made a bad mistake, but it wasn't bad enough to end the marriage. She told them that I was just being stubborn and things would work out. The therapist was beyond angry and in a meeting with her said, "How could you do this to your children? Your husband shows no inclination to reconcile. Moreover, in one of our sessions, he talked to the children about divorce. They had enough classmates in the same situation to get a basic understanding of how things work. They had also watched enough of their parents' remarriages to realize that sometime in the future, there might be someone new in their lives. Your children believe, and I might add quite rightly, that your relationship with your husband is over. I know you've had several conversations, but it hasn't helped, and I think I understand why. You still refuse to consider that you have done anything wrong, at least so wrong as to divorce because of it. I highly recommend that you seek counseling with a married couple. I don't believe it will help you reconcile, but perhaps it will lead to you being able to accept the way things are and move on. I will not be seeing you again. Thank you for attending the ones I asked for." That didn't make any impression on Linda other than the remark about counseling. Her counselor was pretty good, and the judge ordered 8 sessions. If after 4 sessions the therapist felt there was no further progress, she could stop all further sessions. On the other hand, if she saw progress, she could add more sessions. My lawyer tried to gag me, but I stood up and asked the judge if I could speak. He nodded, warning me to be polite. "Your Honor, I need to be clear. I have no interest in a further relationship with my wife other than as co-parents of our children. With that in mind, I will attend the sessions. But I absolutely refuse to attend more than 8 sessions. That should be enough to resolve all of our concerns. I'm serious, Your Honor. Yes, you can put me in jail or fine me or both if I refuse, but you have to think about this. This divorce is getting a lot of media attention, and I'm sure you don't want it to turn into a quagmire of mud, and I, for one, am more than happy to talk to the press. One more thing, Your Honor. I want her lover to attend one meeting and explain why he thinks sleeping with married women is a good idea, and why he thinks it shouldn't affect my marriage. Thank you, sir." My lawyer looked at me like I had grown 2 heads, and the judge looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or throw me under the bus. Linda looked like she was going to get physically sick any second, and her lawyer seemed to be trying to find something to object to. Finally, he banged the gavel twice. I don't have the authority to send him to marriage counseling if it's not his marriage. I'll draft a letter requesting consideration, but I wouldn't hold out much hope for that. Your attorney may tell you that it is perfectly legal to require him to appear in court, but that is entirely up to you. Counselors, submit a list of therapists or get one from the court, but I want all parties to agree and sessions to start in 2 weeks. I will also require sessions to be twice a week. That way it will be over much sooner rather than later. If any of your clients miss a session, I will not threaten them with jail. I'll just declare the session valid and they can't reschedule. Ordered. Bailiff, proceed to the next case. Linda was not pleased. Not at all. She was waiting for me at the car with a determined look on her face. This has to stop. Please. This is not at all what I wanted. I thought it was a bad idea to talk to her without our lawyers present, but curiosity took over. Just for the sake of conversation, what did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd be angry, but love me enough to put up with it. It was one night. All the years we've been together, our family, our kids, it wasn't worth throwing away for one night. It wasn't just one night. It was every night for the rest of our lives after that night. What you did was cold, calculating, and the ultimate in disrespect. You left me fooled in front of our supposed friends, and some of them even helped you slip out the back door like a whore. Before tonight, I would have bet my life that you loved me and our children, Linda. Not anymore. We're broken up, and all the counseling in the world won't fix that. I'll see you at the first session. Wait. I need a favor. What favor can you ask me? It's about Mark. Could you cut him some slack? It's starting to affect his charity work. Think of the children. You mean like you and him thinking about ours the other night? I don't care about his charities, and I promise you that pretty soon his charity will be the least of his problems. Will you tell me how you know that? She had enough guilt to lower her eyes. He called me. He did? How did he get your number? Her face reddened, and then it hit me. You gave it to him that night, didn't you? In case he wanted to repeat the performance? He didn't. I don't know why I gave it to him, I just did. I should have known you wouldn't help. I just laughed and got in the car, marveling at how stupid she had become. While all of this was going on, I was being pressured to be reasonable. The league, the team, every organization associated with football, its charities, several sports talk shows. Everyone was pressuring me to leave it alone. Even my boss, a big fan of the team, put a little pressure on me. In response, I found another job. I think he realized too late how I would react and how it would look to everyone else in our organization and the public. He tried to back down and keep me on the team, but it was too late. I wondered how angry he was about the complaint I had filed with corporate HR. I had a feeling his future was toast, and I figured it wouldn't happen to a more deserving person. It got so bad that I started writing down every conversation I had. The first few I didn't, but then I did, and that led to some pretty short conversations. The sportscaster we called the night the whole mess started invited me on his radio show. It was his show, ranked #1 in listenership, and I threw in a few bombshells, snippets of conversations I'd had with various people. One that was a big hit was a line about a team owner. He called, got outraged, and threatened to sue me. The sports announcer did nothing but hold back from laughing. You can't see him, but my guest is nodding his head affirmatively. He doesn't even seem to be impatient. Is there anything you'd like to say? He nodded as the microphone turned on, and the first thing I did was laugh. What are you going to sue me for? For telling the truth? I checked, and in this state it's perfectly legal to record your conversations without notifying the person you're talking to. It's called one-party consent. Besides, I'm not going to use this conversation in any legal matter unless you insist on it. My attorney says we have good reason to accuse you, the team as a whole, and the National League of Harassment and unwarranted mental anguish. Do you have anything else to say? He hung up. The program was picked up by several syndicated programs, and it briefly made the national news. I never heard another word from them. Mr. Mark found that the press ignored him unless someone wanted to ask about the divorce. He was used to being treated like a hero, to being the center of attention, and it frustrated him greatly. Even though his lawyers told him not to say anything and to be careful, he still snapped and did something stupid. He came after me at my house. The first thing I did was install a state-of-the-art security system when I bought my new house. Ironically, it was the system he had advertised in the company's commercials, and he was right. It was worth it. One night, there was a knock on the door, and when I looked at my phone, the doorbell camera showed 3 very large men standing on the porch of my house. They didn't look happy. I had my kids with me, so I pressed the silent alarm button, which automatically alerted the police. They called immediately. You'd be surprised how many people set it off by accident. Sir, this is 911. Did you send out the alarm? Yes. There are 3 very large men standing on my porch. 3 men I don't know, 3 men who don't look happy. I didn't open the door, and now they're pounding on it, demanding that I let them in. Sir, we have a car 4 minutes away. If you fear for your safety, do not open the door. I thanked them and waited 3.5 minutes before opening the door, making sure the storm door was locked. What can I do for you? Mark sent us to reason with you. You will immediately drop all legal action against him. And if I don't? Then we'll give you a lesson in cooperation. Gentlemen, you are trespassing. Please leave the premises immediately. The largest of them sighed. Well, boys, it looks like this man needs convincing. The storm door could have been made of styrofoam when he ripped it off its hinges. They were about to enter when a voice sounded behind them. Police. Stop immediately and turn around with your hands up. If looks could kill, they wouldn't have to touch me to get what Mark wanted. The big guy looked like he was about to join the fight, but his buddies talked him out of it. Pretty soon they were all on the ground with handcuffs on their hands. The sergeant took my report from me and, after reviewing the tapes, charged them all with trespassing. I later learned that trespassing carries a much harsher penalty. The difference was that trespassing is usually a spontaneous decision, and there was usually no serious criminal intent. If, on the other hand, you come onto someone's property on purpose to cause them harm, that's a whole different category. It turned out that one worked at the stadium as a keeper, and the other was just a friend of the third. He was on the team's practice squad, but he was immediately expelled. Apparently, Mark had promised him a spot on the team if he did him this favor, even though he had no authority to do so. The rest of them were getting $1,000 a buck each. It cost Mark a lot more because he had to pay the lawyer's bills. I don't know how much it cost him, but they all pleaded guilty and got a huge fine that Mark had to pay. He had to go to court for setting it all up, and even his hero status couldn't save him. His lawyers managed to reduce the case to a misdemeanor. He had to pay a $5,000 fine and do 200 hours of community service. TMZ made a video of him in an orange vest picking up trash on the highway. It hit YouTube and gained 600,000 views in the first week. Linda was rapidly becoming the most expensive woman he'd ever gone after. Some fans turned against him, and although it wasn't visible on TV, signs appeared in the stands as the new season began. It was affecting his play, and one group put up a large banner. Put someone's wife on the goal line. It will make him focus. Of course, stadium security made them take the poster down, but it was too late. Within 3 hours, the video went viral and racked up 750,000 views in the first 2 days. Mark went from being a franchise player to getting little playing time, and one of his sponsors scrapped a campaign they'd started until things settled down, which meant never. The law of averages caught up with me one night. They came out of nowhere, 4 of them. They beat the shit out of me, and I ended up with 2 broken fingers on my hand, a broken leg, a cracked cheekbone, and bruised ribs. These guys knew what they were doing because it all happened in about 90 seconds. I don't know how much damage they would have had time to do if it hadn't been for a coworker who came out of the office right after me. When he yelled, they demonstrated their professionalism by immediately running away. 10 minutes later, I was in an ambulance, and an hour later, I was in the room where they left me overnight for observation due to a concussion. My head was splitting, and I was falling in and out of consciousness. One day, I woke up and thought I saw Linda sitting there, but I immediately blacked out briefly. When I woke up again, I was alone. It was 7 days before I was able to return to work. The cops had gotten some surveillance images from several businesses across the street, but none of them had anything identifiable on them. The police officer who took my statement gave me some advice. If you've messed with anyone lately, tell me. These guys were professionals. They avoided cameras as much as possible, wore big hats and loose clothing, so we don't have faces or anything recognizable like tattoos or scars. I told him my sad story. I was told that he laughed when they questioned him and admitted that he didn't like me, but that he had nothing to do with the attack. They didn't believe it for a minute, but they had no proof. I had to give up my weekends with the kids. I wasn't physically fit, and I didn't want them to see me until the bruises came off. Linda was horrified by what had happened, but agreed. She even offered to come over and help. I politely declined. The counseling session dragged on as it usually does. It was a wash, rinse, repeat cycle that went on for 4 sessions before even the therapist got bored with it. On the 5th session, she asked us not to interrupt her as she spoke. We've reached an impasse, and frankly, I don't think we'll ever get past it. Linda, you refuse to admit that what you did was wrong by conventional standards, and you refuse to think that should stop your marriage. Am I? You left your husband in the middle of a club and then poof, you left to spend the night with another man. You did it completely unannounced and used your friends so he wouldn't stop you. Tell me, if he had done that to you, left you standing in the middle of a public place surrounded by your so-called friends who were complicit in the deception, would you have been sympathetic? Judging by your actions and communication here, I highly doubt it. Hold on. Don't speak. Think about it while I talk to your husband. She turned to me with an expression of sadness on her face. You'll never get her back. That's as clear as the nose on your face. From the way you and I have been communicating, it goes without saying. I understand, I really do, but let me ask you this. Up until the moment she left the club with another man, you loved her. She was faithful and steadfast all these years. Your wife says it was a one-time act that even she doesn't understand, but it was important enough to jeopardize her marriage. She swears it's out of her system and she will never do anything like it again. Is there anything left in you ready to try again? I'll let your wife speak first. Please don't interrupt. You will have your say afterward. Agreed? She nodded to Linda, and we waited a minute while she gathered her thoughts. You know, you've talked a lot about how I have little remorse for my actions. I have remorse, a lot of remorse. I never thought it would hurt our marriage until the divorce. I knew I had hurt you badly, and I knew you would be angry. But really, I never thought you would react the way you did. I am terribly sorry that my actions hurt you, and I can assure you in the strongest possible terms that I will never do anything like that again, especially now that I know the price of such actions. I beg you, even if you don't forgive me completely, come home and let me make things right." She seemed satisfied with her speech and looked at me expectantly. "You can say whatever you want, Linda, but on some level you knew how much what you did hurt us. You knew I wasn't some passive guy who would just brush it off and say, well, it's just one time and she says she won't do it again." Bullshit. If I did that, you'd lose all respect for me, and maybe you wouldn't actively seek her out. But if another opportunity presented itself, you'd run away like a bastard, knowing I'd forgive. I don't do that now, and I will never allow myself to be in that situation again so that I have to forgive. Aside from the blatant disrespect you showed, the destruction of trust in my marriage topped it off. Even before I left, if you had been gone for more than 30 minutes, I would have wondered if you were having fun with him or someone else. Let me make this as clear as I can to you. We're not staying married. I'm divorcing you. You can drag this out, use every delaying tactic you can, but eventually the court will get tired of it all and it will happen. Please don't procrastinate any longer." I looked at the counselor. "Are we done?" She sighed. "Yes. I will submit my report to the court no later than Wednesday, say the marriage is irreversibly broken, and recommend that they grant the divorce." "No. I'm not giving up. Please, darling, think of the children." "I am thinking about the children. I think about them every damn day I don't have them. Tell me, Linda, if the kids were so important to you, how many times did you think about them while he was shaking the crap out of you in his mansion? Was the trip worth it? For you, maybe. For the rest of your family, who had yet to live in the real world, not so much. Face it, Linda, you screwed up." Pun intended. "See you in court." I think the consequences of what she did eventually got to her. Everyone was just tired at the end. Her lawyer was tired. My lawyer was tired. The judge was exhausted. One of the bailiffs looked like he had aged 5 years since the trial started. After the therapist's report, the judge cut short another attempt to stall and declared us divorced. Linda walked out of court without saying a word, and my lawyer only grinned when I asked the question. "Now?" He grinned a wild grin worthy of a rabid mountain lion. "Yes. Now." The next day, Mr. Mark was sued for alienation of affection. He didn't have to sign with the Panthers or buy a house in North Carolina. I'm told his outcry was epic. He can't do it. His lawyer sighed. Unfortunately, he can. It's still on the books in North Carolina. Before you start, yes, it's an archaic law that should have been repealed years ago. Most states did. Unfortunately, this is not one of them. My advice is to settle the case as quickly as possible and put it behind you. The notoriety may cost you more than the settlement. Everyone in his orbit called. His lawyers called, the heads of his charities called. Team officials called, even the NFL commissioner, all begging me for an out-of-court settlement. The offers kept mounting, and even my lawyer told me I should accept, but I refused. It didn't matter that I wouldn't get anything. What mattered was that I could sling it in the mud. The investigators my lawyer hired got the bouncer and the team leader to confess that they were paid to help them accomplish their goals. Mark tried to avoid appearing in court, but since he had to testify several times, he had no choice. One of the appearances was on a Friday, and he tried to excuse himself by saying he had to fly to another city that day to prepare for a rare Saturday game. The judge was not a football fan. Take a later flight and be in this courtroom tomorrow. I think he put us on the docket as late as possible just to annoy him. The man had charm, and his lawyers tried to recruit a jury of women, but my lawyer was smart enough to outsmart them a few times. They recruited 7 women, but 3 of them were over 50 and happily married. 1 was a lesbian, 2 were young and single, and the last was a blonde who had just recently divorced. 2 of the men were young and single, and the other 3 were married and middle-aged. First, he said he had never seen her, and they had gone down the road of shame, so he had to admit that she had been in his house. Then he began to deny that they had sex, saying he was trying to protect her from her abusive husband. Linda decided that if she described her experience in a letter, I would better understand her thoughts, and since the letter was written to me and in my possession, we were able to present it in court. No one believed the ploy with the abusive husband. The final nail in the coffin lid was Linda's court appearance. She said everything, even how many times she'd slept with him. I had no idea. In the letter, she indicated it was 3 or 4, but it was actually 5. The jury was out for less than an hour before returning with a verdict. Part of the trial was full financial disclosure, and I think everyone in the courtroom was amazed at how much he was worth. He played in the NFL for 7 years and had amassed a fortune of $96 million. I thought my lawyer was going to faint when I was awarded about a third of that, $30 billion. It was the highest award in the state's history, but it was in line with what other spouses had received. The highest award previously was $8.8 million. The laws were recently changed, but they still allowed up to one-third of the defendant's assets to be paid. Of course, when this was enacted, hardly anyone thought a case with that many millions would ever arise. There were a number of moves in the state legislature to repeal this law, but it didn't make it through committee. I was lucky. His lawyers pouted their lips and tried to appeal, secretly urging him to take the deal and be done with it. They filed a notice of intent to appeal, but dropped it a month later and agreed to the court's decision. Apparently, there was a loophole in the law. If the defendant's fortune grew during the appeal and he still lost, the amount of the deal would be adjusted accordingly. A couple months later, he had a huge contract payment waiting for him. The day after I received the award, my attorney served him with 4 more lawsuits from married couples and divorced men and women who claimed. Of the 4, 2 were divorced, 1 marriage was still on shaky ground, and another couple turned out to be swingers and thought he had chosen her. But as the offering train was about to leave the station, they jumped on board. The divorced wives, including Linda, filed separate lawsuits. I'd already gotten a big piece of the pie, and some of the seduction had happened years ago, and they settled out of court quickly, getting $4 million each. Still, the son of a bitch was left with tens of millions. The saga wasn't over yet. It turned out that he was having an affair with the wife of one of his teammates, and had a one-night stand with another. It was a little fact that the investigators found out, and I was happy to share it. During the next play, several players either fell or blocked in the wrong direction, and he took 3 hits, the last of which took him out of the game through concussion protocol. No excuses could have been made, but everyone realized his continued play with the Panthers was not a viable option. They traded him to Green Bay, where he played well but not spectacularly. His earnings took a big hit when the Panthers refused to pay out on his contract, citing a morals clause. He had to settle for 20% of what he could have earned. Green Bay gave him a 1-year contract, and when it expired, refused to pay him what he wanted, so he went to Denver on another 1-year, $4 million deal. He played at full strength, and after his contract ended, some teams were interested enough to offer him a contract, but at a much lower salary. He eventually signed a 2-year contract with Cincinnati at a salary of $2.5 million. It had strict morals clauses, including forfeiture of everything he had earned to date if he was caught in compromising conditions. While his play wasn't bad, it wasn't in keeping with his prime, and they wouldn't offer another contract when his current one expired. He was already 34 years old, battered and suffering from constant injuries, so he retired and had a radio show with the Bengals for 2 years. After that, he became a nobody. The bastard still had a fortune of about $50 million, which was about a third or less of what he might have had if not for lawsuits and bad publicity. When last heard of, he had bought 2 car dealerships in California and was up to his old tricks again. One of the spouses took it personally, and Mark walks with a pronounced limp. I doubt he's learned anything. I saw a picture of him in a sports magazine, something like, "Where Are They Now?" where he was pictured at the opening of the 3rd dealership. He had a pretty good spare tire, and he shaved his head when he started going bald. Nevertheless, all those millions in his glory days would probably still attract the ladies. I thought about forwarding the article to Linda. Linda got half of everything we had saved and could keep the house until the last child turned 18. Then she could buy it or we would sell it and split the profits. She also received child support based on my former salary. They were still my children, so if they needed anything extra, they got it. I bought her a new SUV because her car was totaled and she hadn't gotten her payment yet. My kids needed reliable and safe transportation. I often wondered if the fact that I got all those millions just because she was a woman and she didn't have access to any of it was hindering her. Linda wasn't completely destitute. She eventually got a settlement from her lover, and since Nanette and Eric had come up with an app based on my idea when we were still married, she got half of my share. The app was very popular for years, especially when they added the option to let you talk when it was slammed. The most popular were "Go to hell," "Kiss my ass," and "Don't ever goddamn call me again." They cost $5 apiece. Her paycheck was about $30,000 a year for about 3 years, after which the method stopped being popular and the payouts got much smaller. I didn't need it, but I put my share into the kids' college fund, telling them when they got older that every time they heard that, their college fund got bigger. One day I calculated it as accurately as I could. As a result of the lawsuits, the loss of a lucrative contract and publicity, the reduction in payouts, and the shortening of Mark's career, he probably lost between 110 and 170 million, making Linda one of the most expensive whores in history. Everyone should be famous for something, I guess. Dee divorced less than a year after us. Janie and her husband lasted another 18 months before going their separate ways. The ones where the wife had already cheated divorced before my divorce was final. As far as I know, the rest stayed as couples. I didn't care. After that last morning, I never spoke to them again. 6 years passed, and every once in a while I would wake up and reach for Linda, usually after I had a dream about what we were like before that incident. I didn't remarry. I was still a little shy around women, but I started dating. I was surprised at the number of women who wanted deeper relationships until I realized they had my money in mind. This made me extremely wary. Both kids are very into soccer now. My son does it mostly for friends and fun, but my daughter is very serious about it and has some good talent. Her best friend plays a little better than she does, and I got to know her and her mom because of all the sleepovers. Scarlett was wayward and not very confident due to her psycho ex doing her head in. I found out from her daughter that she was tight with money because her ex disappeared and stopped paying child support. Without saying a word to her, I located him and arrested him for failure to pay child support. He had a good job, and the judge ordered him to pay off all arrears within 2 years or go to jail. This caused the payments to double every month, and they could breathe easier. I never told her I was the one who found him. Scarlett started smiling more, stopped slouching, and got a new closet. The change was amazing, and guys started hitting on her, especially after she started wearing those tight shorts to games and practices. By then, she was getting comfortable with me, and I became her shield. The girls used to put us together all the time. I don't know when it happened, but we often held hands while the girls dragged us to their events. They ended up staying overnight a lot, with the girls sharing a room and Scarlett using the guest room. My money allowed me to buy a very nice house. It was situated on 40 acres of hills and lowlands, had a pond, a 10-acre pasture, and a 6-stall barn. The previous owners were horse lovers. It wasn't long before the house was filled with horses. I approached the idea with some apprehension. I hadn't had much interaction with horses, and their size, as well as their large teeth, frightened me. Scarlett laughed softly at me. She grew up on a farm and always had a horse when she was little. After 5 months, I gave in and instructed her to find horses for the kids, including her, and one for herself. I would pay all the expenses, and she would only have to teach the children how to ride and care for them. I'll pay, but I'll be damned if I'm going to be shoveling shit. There was a lot of grumbling, but Scarlett stood her ground. Either they take care of their animals or we get rid of them. I don't know exactly when we started making decisions about kids together. Scarlett just took the lead, and I followed her lead. That Christmas, Scarlett bought me a horse, a big pinto with a sly twinkle in his eye. It took a lot of begging, and finally Scarlett said that if I didn't start riding with them, she would stop spending time with me. This sent the children into a panic. The girls have reached the age where their bodies are starting to change, and they told her all their fears and concerns. My son obviously really missed his mother figure. He had a lot of problems during the divorce, and Scarlett seemed to be a calming factor. I learned to ride and eventually started shoveling horse shit. Scarlett had us put the waste in a pile, and after it matured, she would use it for compost in her garden. I'm not sure exactly when I agreed to a vegetable garden, but one day we were buying a cultivator and hand tools. She tried to operate the cultivator, but the big machine bounced her around. When I finished laughing, which infuriated her unspeakably, I took over. After the plot was tilled and leveled, she could run it, but if she wanted to expand the plot, which was twice, I was called back into service. The children helped because she told them that if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to eat anything that grew. Then she told them the story of the red hen. They thought it was funny, but they got the point. We had just taken the girls to soccer camp when I asked her if she thought she would ever start dating again. Had she gotten tired of being single? Her face turned red and had a, "You really don't like what's going on" expression on it, but then she started laughing. I'm dating. He's a pretty nice guy, even if he's oblivious to the world around him most of the time. Jealousy shot through me like lightning. She saw it and grinned. I'm dating you, silly. How many times have we gone out to eat, to the movies, or on field trips with the kids? I don't know why I even keep an apartment. We're with you 5 days a week as it is. But it's just family stuff. You're absolutely right. I'd draw you a picture, but I'm afraid you'd break down trying to figure it out. It's family stuff because we've become a family. Your kids already call me mom when you're not around, and Kelsey plans to take you to school on Father-Daughter Day. It's a good thing she's at a different school now, or there would be a major scheduling conflict. By then, she was already holding my hand. It's a good thing your son went to science camp. I'm in love with you, honey, and have been for a long time. I respect your position because I know your ex has hurt you a lot. But tell me, when was the last time you were with another woman? You can't, can you? Maybe because you have feelings for someone but were afraid to tell her? That's going to change today. It's time to make a decision. If you want me, turn right toward your house. If not, turn left and take me to my apartment. It's your choice. Just at that moment, we pulled up to an intersection. I fiddled with the signal a bit and grinned. Look at this. I think the left turn signal is broken. Then I'd better turn right. I'd hate to provoke a collision. Her smile eclipsed the sun. Oh, there will be a collision. A big one. The kids will probably hear everything in their camps. Now hurry up. Let's go home. Just before we turned into our driveway, I grinned. Good thing I bought a house with extra bedrooms. Kelsey needs to pick one of them. Her grip on my arm nearly cut off my circulation. That won't be necessary. The girls have already decided to share a room, at least for a while. I'm sure they'll want their own bedrooms later, but right now they're together. And who knows? We might need an extra bedroom someday. As soon as the garage door closed, we snuggled against each other for a few minutes. When we finally pulled away, she took my face in her hands and looked into my eyes. You don't talk about it, but I know what happened to your first wife. I just want you to know that I'm not really into the club life, but when I'm committed completely. I don't have much, but I have honor, and I swear to you that in future relationships I will never do anything like that. Ever. I promise. Is that enough? I looked into those soulful, loving eyes and smiled. Enough. Later, she offered to sign a prenup, but after my outburst, she only chuckled and never brought it up again. For a while, Linda was having a very hard time. The repercussions of being so public with me and the alienation of affection lawsuit that made headlines for weeks haunted her like a stray dog begging for a handout. She quit her former job, saying her luggage was too heavy to carry every day. Financially, she was in good shape thanks to her piece of the Mark Pie, so she took her time and didn't work for almost a year. Then she took a job at a small firm just starting out. She did her research and invested $1 million in a startup, taking a 10% stake in the company. A year later, she was promoted and the company began to expand. I researched them more out of idle curiosity than anything else, and while they had a good product and a good business plan, they were seriously underfunded. I discussed this at length with my investment managers, and when they went public, quietly invested $5 million in our children's names and gave Linda proxies to vote. Despite what she did to me, she always looked out for her children's best interests. As a result of the purchase, she became the controlling partner. When it became necessary to split the business, she was promoted to vice president of sales and production. Linda worked 50 hours a week or more, but seemed to thrive, and besides, the children were often at my house, looking at their little brother with delight. Scarlett was 6 years younger and told me that one of the conditions of the marriage was that at least one child be born. Daniel Brock, that was his grandfather's name, was almost 2, and I was even glad the older kids liked him so much because it gave Scarlett a break now and then. The first thing she did was, at my insistence, change careers and become a stay-at-home mom. It was a full-time job with 3 teenagers and a 2-year-old to keep up with. I still don't sleep well, and sometimes in the middle of the night my eyes open, and I think about where I would be now if Linda hadn't cheated. Then I noticed something. If I got up to get a drink or go to the bathroom, Scarlett was restless when I returned, but as soon as I lay down and touched her, she would immediately fall into a deep sleep. Often I woke up to the fact that she was lying almost on top of me. It was as if she wasn't happy and didn't feel safe unless we had physical contact. I also realized that we often held hands when we walked or went shopping, except when one of us had to go get the kids. Then her hand was back in mine. I searched my memory. Linda usually slept as far away from me as possible, claiming she was too hot to be comfortable. We were at our son's high school graduation. Scarlett went to take some pictures with his friends. Linda's new husband went with her because his son and ours were great buddies, and that's what initially brought them together, as it did Scarlett and me. They had been married for 3 years now and seemed happy. She looked at me with sad eyes. Can we talk for a minute? Sure. About what? I need to give you something 12 years late. An apology. It took me about 4 years and some therapy to really understand what I did to you and the pain you went through. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Even today, I can't tell you why I did it and thought it would be okay. And this is after years of counseling. For years, I was so angry at you for divorcing me that I couldn't think straight. In my warped view of reality, it wasn't a big deal. I had a chance to sleep with someone famous, and I took it without a second thought. You should have been proud of me. I looked at her and she smiled. I know. Reality didn't come for a long time. Then, after about 2 years of therapy, my counselor asked me who was on your list of celebrities. Remember, all the people we would sleep with if we were single and had the chance. I immediately thought of Anne Hathaway. Still crushing on her? I grinned. Yeah, I like her. I think she's gotten even better looking as she's gotten older. Then my psychologist asked me how I'd feel if we were at a premiere or something and you had the opportunity to sleep with her. You had someone distract me, and then you left with her. And then you came home and acted like it was no big deal and wondered why I was so upset. I laughed at first. He would never do anything like that to me, I told her. Then she made me think about it like it really happened, and the whole world knows about it. I closed my eyes and replayed the whole thing in my head. I was almost in a rage imagining it. That's when the breakthrough happened. As angry as I was at you in the fantasy, I actually did the exact same thing to you in reality, and nothing could change that. So here's my apology. I was wrong to act the way I did, and you had every reason to divorce me. If you had left with Anne, I would never have trusted you again, no matter how many times you professed your love for me and swore it would never happen again. If I had known then what I know now, I would have laughed in his face when he asked me to dance. I thought about that for a minute. Thank you, Linda. In a way, it makes me feel a little better. I thought about it as I walked away. The water through the dam is not recycled. Burned bridges are very hard to rebuild. You take what life throws at you and do the best you can with what you have. With Linda, I had a lot, but with Scarlett, I have everything. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.